All right, back at it. Another episode of the More to It podcast. I'm the host, Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com, and I am pleased to be joined by Mr. Steve Warren, former Nebraska Cornhusker, former third-round pick of the Green Bay Packers, and he runs a great Dreams Foundation, runs a great Warren Academy, and he goes by the nickname of Big Woo. Man, what's up?
Nothing much, man. How you doing, Jay?
Good. Remind me again, how'd you get, you've told me this, I think, like a couple times. How'd you get that nickname Big Woo again?
So at this point, I can't even really remember who gave it to me. We were in study hall my freshman year. And it was a bunch of older guys, myself, and they kind of found out I could sing. And so there's a old singer that has a song that's called "Can You Woo Woo Woo." And so when they found out that I could sing, they started singing that song, "Can You Woo Woo Woo," and woo woo just stick after that. It started out as woo woo, and then it just went to woo after that.
Man, that's a good one, because people are like, that's Woo. I mean, like, who's Woo? I'm like, oh, Steve Warren. Like, oh, okay. Like, that's what everyone knows him by, you know?
Yeah,
do they even call you Steve?
I mean, very few players called me Steve.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, most of the people that call me Steve or Steven is, people that don't know the nickname at all. Pretty much everybody else calls me Woo.
That's too good. I mentioned, you have your Dreams Foundation, you have the Warren Academy. How's it been the challenges dealing with those two and obviously the Warren Academy, because it's really taken off here in the last few years, is dealing with the pandemic and trying to get kids in there to get the workouts in, stay active, and give them something to do and look forward to in hard times.
It's kind of been twofold. Like, so for Dream, it's everything shut down because we're Omaha Public Schools.
Right.
Kids aren't in the schools, of course, so we're trying to find ways to reach them virtually, trying to find ways to make sure they can still get the resources that we help supply to them, the food and the art classes and the enrichment programs that they get when they come to the Dream side of our after-school programs. For Warren Academy, it's been pretty good. Starting back in May, we opened up, and most of it's been pretty full for the most part. I think people have got cabin fever. They're tired of being in the house. And those athletes that are serious about going to college, they know that they can't take 6, 7, 8 months off from not doing anything. So those kids have been pretty active still and trying to find a way to at least work out. Or we had the showcase last month, and so we had a lot of athletes out doing that. So they're trying to find different ways that they can still showcase their talents, still stay in shape, still get ready for their seasons whenever their seasons are going to hit. Some people are playing football, some people aren't. So it's been challenging, but it's also been rewarding in the way that we built more relationships with a lot more kids and a lot more athletes.
Yeah. So talk about that showcase, because that was a big ordeal. Obviously, Thomas Fidone was there. You've been training with him and many other big time recruits in the state of Nebraska and the surrounding areas. The process of getting that all set up in a pandemic, I imagine it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't the easiest part. The good thing is we were actually working on doing a showcase or a combine or some type of event for the past couple of years. We just never really had the right time to do it. And I don't like doing things just to do them.
Right.
When we do them, we want to make sure there's a purpose for them and that there's that it's going to be good. The other part of it, that it's going to be successful. So it was just perfect time for us to do it. The kids didn't have anything that they had been able to do for the past few months, and we rolled it out. And I already had the relationships built with the writers and the people that helped put on the camp. So it was perfect for us.
That's awesome. I mean, so we always talked about, we talk about Nebraska football and recruiting and in the 500-mile radius. But what's interesting is you can go back to even when you were coming in, my time, Nebraska was pumping out about 5 to 6 to 7 to maybe even 8 Division I athletes a year. And that, you go back the last 10 years, that hasn't been happening, but it's starting to pick back up. And you're very fortunate now. You can get your hands on some of these kids that are coming and working out your academies and just experiencing, and trying to develop them, give them your knowledge. But I mean, you got some kids coming now that are coming to work out with you that are getting a lot of D1 offers.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that now we've been at it for so long that we've built a reputation of guys that can help you if you're trying to get to that next level. And not only when you get to the next level, we can help you be prepared for it. And that's really what we do. We tell the kids that are those college caliber kids. Like, we're not here to help you be better high school players. You're already a good high school player.
Right.
We're here to make sure you're prepared when you get to college so you can be successful when you get there. And you being a former player and college athlete and pro athlete, you know that most of the times people don't succeed is because they're not prepared when they get there. Like, they're not used to the adversity they're going to meet, the intensity of the workouts, the change of the game, the speed of the game. So we try to put them in environments as to where they're successful when they get to the next level. A lot of these kids, we were talking about this with, I think, one of the writers from Hell Varsity a couple of weeks ago. The game has changed to where it's more of a passing game. So now we're seeing those guys like Thomas Fidone and James Carney and Micah Riley and Caden Helms being able to showcase being pass catchers. Before, around this area, they would have been run blockers. So they probably wouldn't have played football, some of them. They would have just stuck with basketball. But now they're all starting to get out there. And so now you're seeing those tight end type kids that are starting to come up, and that's helped the number of athletes that are coming out of this area now, because there's always been those big kids, those tall kids that were like tweeners. They weren't quite D linemen. They weren't quite receivers. They were really tight ends, but they didn't want to block. So they played basketball here. Now those basketball players are starting to come out on the football field.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, man, that was a big get for Nebraska to get Fidone. You've been working with him now for a couple years, right?
Yeah, for over 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those guys you just got to kind of show him, just get him in the right area, because he's special, man. His athletic ability. I mean, he could be. I mean, I think he'll be a 5-star before this is all said and done. Number one or two tight end in the nation. But that kid has the ability to absolutely take over a football field.
Yeah, he is. He's a special talent. To his testament, he has worked extremely hard. From the time that we kind of got around him, and him getting around the other guys that he was around last year, I think helped. He's around Jay Ducker and Xavier Watts and Treon Jones from North, and just really high caliber defensive backs and receivers. So he kind of saw where his deficiencies were as a receiver. And from that point of him joining our program and getting around those guys and competing against those caliber athletes, he really kind of clicked for him. He was like, okay, I know what I need to do. I know what I need to work on. And he went to work. And, of course, it's paying off for him now.
Yeah. How long do you know he was going to come to Nebraska? Did he give you a heads up?
I did. You know what? I wanted to be surprised. So I actually talked to his coach, Coach Camrad. Justin Camrad is one of our coaches on the academy, too, and it's his head coach. And we talked a couple days before, and he asked me, he said, you know where he's going? I said, no, I want to be surprised like everybody else. We talked, of course, about all the places and what he liked, what he didn't like. And it was more or less where he felt most comfortable at. His dad and his family are huge Nebraska fans.
Right.
I always had a hunch that it would be Nebraska, but, he had a lot of good schools after him. A lot of good programs that showcase tight ends as like their main position. So he had a tough choice to make.
Yeah, no, I'm glad he chose Nebraska, because I'm trying to think if we've had a tight end coming in there like that. I mean, it might be since like Matt Harrion, who came with me, and Matt would have been a first-round draft pick if he doesn't break his leg his junior year. But that's a good get. So let's go back to Kickapoo High, Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah, we're going way back.
Yeah, let's go way back. Your recruiting process, man. What other schools were you considering besides Nebraska, and why Nebraska?
Well, it was around that time. It was the old Big Eight transitioning to the Big 12. So most of the schools that I considered were in that Big 8, Big 10 region. We had Illinois. Illinois was on my radar, and Alabama, Kansas State, Kansas, and Nebraska were kind of my final 5. Kansas at the time had just went to bowl games and been good. They were trying to build up that program with Glenn Mason. Kansas State was Bob Stoops and Snyder and those guys. There was a lot of good coaches that were recruiting me around that area. And then Alabama was kind of Alabama. They've always been traditionally a pretty good powerhouse school. So it was fun. My recruiting process was a little bit interesting, because in my area there wasn't a lot of guys that came out. There was a couple of linemen before me that had went to Mizzou. So traditionally guys walked on at Mizzou. Grant Wistrom was from Joplin, and so he was kind of the guy that kind of opened up the door for our area a little bit more. So, hey, that's a guy that can play. He's from this area. So then I started kind of coming down there a little bit more to see what other guys were down there. So, of course, then Tracy followed after I left out of that area. But it was interesting because Nebraska had just, won back-to-back national championships. So the choice for me wasn't hard going to all the other schools and them knowing Nebraska was on the radar and it being not that far from home. I think Mizzou more than anybody else felt pressure because I was a home state kid and they had just let Rucker get out of the state and Lindstrom get out of the state and myself, and then Dan Alexander's a Missouri guy, and we were all leaving Missouri. So, you know, their top players in the state each year had pretty much left. So it was fun in the regard that it was a lot of attention that was on us at that time, but it was also stressful, you know, being recruited, that after a while you just get tired of phone calls and the emails and the letters and the visits and the trips and just want to get it over with. I ended up committing after my senior season, which is different than what everybody does now, but it was good.
Yeah, so you get here and you go into a D-line room, obviously led by Charlie McBride.
Yeah.
But you got Jason Peter in there. You got Grant Wistrom, all in that room. Talk about just coming into you just gotta you gotta be like, holy smokes, you know, these dudes can flat out play some football.
Yeah.
And I know they didn't take it easy on you either.
No.
How was it coming into that room with those guys, man? I bet you got some stories.
Expectations were very high. I mean, you couldn't come in that room and be a guy with thin skin at all, because any deficiency, like, it was just getting torn apart. Jason was a guy that loved to pick on people, right? You know,
right.
Everybody knows Jason. Like, he'd love to drive guys and do stuff, and had nicknames for everybody, and was always throwing tape balls at guys in the meetings when they were falling asleep. And it was just crazy. And then you got Charlie McBride up there in the front, and anybody that knows Charlie knows what kind of character he is, and some of his sayings and some of the things that I remember him telling guys in the room that they would never touch the green grass in Memorial Stadium as long as he was the coach. And I used to think, like, God, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I do not want to be that guy. Let me try to do at least something he's telling me to do, right? So it was fun, man, with those two in the room for sure.
Yeah. So did you play as a freshman or did you redshirt?
I did not redshirt. So the interesting thing was I probably should have redshirted, but they played me just more as a backup late game role. But my first game, the first game they dressed me out, and we were blowing somebody out. I don't remember who it was. We were blowing somebody out, and Charlie looks at me and said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. So he walked away. And then, of course, you're on the sideline of the game.
Right.
You're on the sideline of the game. So everybody around me is like, you should go in the game. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go in the game. So I didn't really choose. Like, Charlie came back like 2 or 3 minutes later and goes, get in the game. So I was like, okay, well, I just went in the game. So I wasn't going to tell him no.
Right.
What do you do? You know, I wasn't going to tell him no.
You
so
can't tell him no.
The game and I played. So I played probably about 8 or 9 games that year. 8 or 9 games that year. I probably would have benefited a little bit from redshirting, but it worked out for me, so I can't complain.
No, I mean, you played in the national championship game, right? You got some steps in there too.
Well, that was 97. So
yeah,
that year we lost to Texas in the Big 12 championship game.
Oh,
so
okay.
We won that year because we had lost to Texas in the Big 12 game, and then the next year, 97, I ended up starting and being a starter in a black shirt in 97, and then we won the national championship that year.
Got it. See, I thought you came in that 97. Okay, now that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So just how about then? I mean, how I dealt with a different coaching transition, but you guys go from obviously Coach Osborne to Coach Solich. Charlie's still there for a couple more, 2 more years. But that transition, because you guys win the national championship in 97, but then you lose Jason, you lose Grant. You still have a guy like Jay Foreman back there at the linebacker spot. But that transition going from Solich to Osborne, from Osborne to Solich in that 98 season, because obviously that didn't go as well as people expected. Yeah,
it was a rough season. That was a rough season. We lost to Arizona State early in that season, and then and then we lost to Arizona in the bowl game. I think we ended up losing like 3 or 4 games that year. It was a rough transition, and really it was more of a trust thing, I think, more than anything else. I think it was guys just not really trusting each other. And after 97, to be honest, like, we just didn't work that hard. We just didn't work as hard as we probably should have going into 98. It was one of those things, I think, where guys that had so much success, and guys coming in just felt like it was going to keep rolling without us working as hard as those guys from those other championship teams had worked. And we just didn't work as hard as we should have. And we paid for it. We paid dearly for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at that. So you fast forward now, you go into 99 and you guys are stacked. You guys are loaded. And 99 would have been your senior year, right?
Yeah. 99 was my senior year.
That defense was something else though. In 99, man. I mean, you guys got clipped up by was it? Because you beat Texas. You had to play Texas twice. You got beat by Texas early on. You played them again in the Big 12, right?
Yeah.
That defense might have been like arguably one of the best defenses in Nebraska history. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think if people go back and look at that defense and that adversity we had to fight through, that year, the offense broke like a national record for fumbles lost or fumbles on the ground. Right. So we were constantly battling short fields. Like we were constantly battling like turnovers, like quick changes. Like they had a really tough time with the pitch that year. And the guys, new guys back in the backfield, new guys running at the offense, running the show at quarterback. So there was just a lot of dropped options. And we were constantly fighting against the turnover. But to our credit, we always found a way to get off the field without guys scoring points. We were either Vanden Bosch or Polk where one of them was blocking a field goal, or we were just stuffing guys and just pushing them back. You know, we had Mike Brown and Ralph Brown, Sweeney and Joe Walker, Clint Finley, Aaron Wills. Our defense was pretty stacked. Tony Ortiz. We just played that defense. I think we were really close too. Like all of us were really close. Like everybody on that defense, we really were a close unit. And I think part of that happening in 98 really pushed us all together and saying, okay, we can't go out like this in 99. Like we can't have another year like we had in 98.
Right.
So it made us all closer. We worked our tails off going into that summer.
Yeah. So you guys blow out Tennessee in the Fiesta Bowl. Did you guys know that was going to be Charlie's last game coaching going into that one?
Yeah, we knew. He had told the defensive lineman prior to the bowl game, prior to us leaving for the bowl game. So we kind of knew it was his last show, and he was getting out of the game. So not only did we, of course, we couldn't let him go out like that, but you know, just him being the great man that he is, and we wanted to prove to everybody too that we were the best team in the country. Unfortunately, that was the first year of the computers, and you know, losing to Texas early on, and 98 I think hurt us a little bit too. With losing a bunch of players from 98 and then them thinking, well, they're not going to be any good if they were that bad in 98. And then 99, they got a bunch of new guys starting everywhere. So the computers kind of hurt us in that one, but we felt like we were the best team in the country. And we wanted to show everybody that.
Yeah. How were those pregame talks with Charlie in the shower? So you guys with Charlie did your pregames right in the shower, whether it was a home or away. How were those talks with Charlie before?
Some of the most memorable moments I think I have playing were those moments where we gathered as a defensive line and went into the shower. And it was special because it was only defensive linemen, right? It was only us. It was only our group that worked together, and he would go in and he would gather us together and he would give us his last words of encouragement. We would say our own little prayers in there, and then we would get out there and field. But just thinking about those times in those showers, man, just sitting around each other and listening to him motivate us before the games. Like I would do anything to give those times back, because that's what really for me was the best part of the game, was those times in the locker room together before and after the games, just fellowshipping with the brothers and getting ready to go play and prepare.
Yeah, it's something like, I mean, I wasn't even in there. I just get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, those pregame moments with your guys, man, and after the games, there's nothing quite like it. I have to imagine that's what you probably miss most. Is the locker room, because I know what I miss the most. Yeah,
the locker room for sure. It's there's nothing, you can't really describe it unless you've been a player. You can only guess what it's like in the locker room. I mean, there's so many fun moments, there's so many intense moments. It's just that locker room when you're on a football team it holds everything, right? It holds all of our emotions, it holds all of our relationships, our friendships. It's where you start and end your day, right? So it's the home for us, right? So it's something that I wish I try to recreate in my life all the time. And the one thing that I love about coaching and doing the stuff that I do now in training is I get those locker room moments still at times, not the same as if we're going to play, but, you know, going to prepare to go help these kids. We get around each other, and it's still kind of that same camaraderie. And you know what it's like when all the guys get back together. It's just we're always chasing that feeling, right, of being a unit again.
Yeah, I think what I tell people is what the coolest thing about being, I was never in a fraternity at Nebraska, but I said I was part of the greatest fraternity in the world. And that's just being a Nebraska football player. Because it doesn't matter. I got my guys who I played with from 02 through 06, but when I go hang around guys like you, Tony Veland, you just get Jason Peter, Jay Foreman. I feel like I still play with those guys, even though I didn't take a snap with them. But I think that's the coolest thing, that the family that we're all a part of. And, we don't get to see each other all the time. I think if Nebraska had some more success, here as of recently, guys would get together a little more. But when you put your Dreams Foundation weekend on that spring ball weekend, it's just like the family just gets back together again. We weren't able to have it this year. I just getting with the guys, man. You can never recreate those times in the field, but those weekends we get together when you get your spring game going on, that's about as close as it comes.
Yeah, I'm still hurting for not being able to do that. It's
right.
That one time. That's it for me. The event is stressful because we're trying to raise money to help kids, right? To help our organization to continue what we're doing. But it's rewarding because I get to be around the guys. And so for me, I deal with the stress and the headache of it because I know the reward is I get to be around my family for 2 or 3 days, and we get to hang out nonstop and act like we're in college again to a certain extent. Some guys go all the way like that.
Yeah.
Some guys take it to a point like, okay, I'm not in college.
Right.
That far, but it's fun because you get to see the guys, and for me, I feel like, just like you said, I feel like I've played with so many guys I didn't play with because we've been able to mesh those eras together. And you're right, it is the greatest fraternity. Like, there's nothing like being a part of a team or being a part of a tradition like Nebraska and being a part of this family. Like, it's undescribable if you're not a part of it and you're out from the outside looking in. It's something that people always say, what's it like? You can't really describe it. Like, there's not really words that you can. All I can think of is like, it's amazing. Like, you can't really describe what it's like because they wouldn't get it anyway. Like, you have to go through it. You have to be a part of it.
Yeah. So transitioning now. So you're a third-round pick with the Green Bay Packers. When I went to the 49ers, it's interesting to get your take because when I went to the 49ers, there was passion there and energy, but it never could match the level of Nebraska because the 49ers weren't very good when I went there. I want to get your take because you went to a team that embodies their team as closely as the Nebraska Cornhuskers do because you have obviously the University of Wisconsin, but the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay are the only show in town. Was that energy and that fan base about as close as playing in Lincoln, Nebraska when you went to Green Bay?
I think it's the closest thing in professional sports as you can get to as Nebraska. That when I got there, I called my mother and I said, "Hey, I felt like I never left Springfield, Missouri when I went to Lincoln because Springfield's similar to Lincoln, and when I got to Green Bay, I felt like I was still in Lincoln. Like, it was the same type of atmosphere, and you would go places, and of course, everybody knew who you were. It was the only thing that anybody cared about. Of course, there's the Brewers there and the Bucks, but they weren't very good at the time. And so, and still, it didn't matter. Still, if the Packers were losing, it didn't matter what the Brewers or the Bucks were doing because the only thing that really mattered to anybody in Wisconsin was Green Bay, was the Packers. And it was the same type of atmosphere, and it kind of felt like a college town because it's not very big. There's not a lot to do besides hang out with your teammates.
Right.
So it was just like being at school again.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get – so when I was in the practice squad for a little bit, and I thought they were going to pick me up. And I'm like, I would love to go play in Green Bay just to just to feel that passion, that energy. Because I'd been with, the 49ers, and I was the Rams, and the Rams were terrible when I was with them. I said, I just want to go somewhere and have some, good energy, some good passion, And I was hoping that was going to come, but they didn't give me – I didn't get that phone call. How was getting up to speed between college and NFL? Did you have an issue with that? But I imagine you didn't. I would guess you wouldn't because you played the same position. I had to go from a defensive end to a 3-4, so I struggled a little bit and just learning the game all over again. But how was that transition for you?
It was the most difficult thing was the double team in college is way different than the double team in the
Yeah.
So I struggled taking on the double team like I did in the beginning. And I'm not a huge guy, right? Like
Right.
I'm a big guy, but by NFL standards, like I'm a small defensive lineman. So I was still playing the same zero shade, 3 technique. I was still playing the nose. Like, so I was taking on the double team every play. So it was, and it's another one of those things you can't describe. Like you've never taken on a double team before by 2 guys that are 6'6", 340 pounds. Like you can't describe that. Like
No.
you cannot describe that. You just have to imagine what that's like. But play after play, it was tough. But as far as the speed of the game, it wasn't much different. It was just really the technique.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between college O-linemen and pro O-linemen is just they're professionals. So they're very good at their craft. Like pass rushing is way different in the pros than it is in college. You can get away with some sloppy stuff in college that you cannot get away with in the pros because guys are just so technically sound.
Yeah. Who was in that D line when you came into the Packers?
Santana Dotson, Vonnie Holliday, David Bowen, Cletius Hunt, John Theory, rest in peace. John was a great dude. Trying to think who else is in there. Billy Lyons, another guy.
Was like Campman, Aaron Campman, was he on the
It was on that. Kabir
Yeah.
Bijabir and I were the same draft class. So Kabir Campman came afterwards. Great player. Campman was a great player. Trying to think who else was around at that time. Russell Maryland, former overall number pick.
Yeah.
And then Gilbert Brown. So I played with all of them. Yeah.
Hey, so I heard a story about Gilbert Brown. So you always overlapped. So when you were in Green Bay, did Gilbert have his own fridge in the meeting room?
No, he didn't have one. No.
I can't remember where I played with someone else. I think he went to Carolina for a little bit. And I want to say someone he eventually had his own fridge in the meeting room, the D-line meeting room, and the rookies had to provide food and snacks and beverages for him.
That was probably in Carolina. Green Bay. When he got back to Green Bay, Sherman was there, and they were really on him about losing a bunch of weight. So he was constantly in the steam room. Like he lived in the steam room. Like we would get there in the morning, he'd be the first guy there, and he had been in the steam room for probably like an hour already. And he like stayed in the weight room and in the steam room the whole time just so he could make weight.
Well, hell yeah, because when you're getting fined $1,500 for every pound you're overweight, that can add up real quick.
Yeah, real fast. So he wasn't trying to lose too much money. So he stayed on top of it. And the funny thing too is like that year I don't remember him actually going in to our cafeteria and eating very much. Like they were on top of him about the weight because it kind of thing that kind of rode him out at Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
He got so heavy that they were like, well, we're going to let you go. And then so when he came back to Green Bay, I think he really wanted to be in Green Bay, so he did everything he could.
Yeah, did they take it easy on you as a rookie in Green Bay?
You know what? I had Kabir in the room, and if anybody's ever met Kabir's an interesting guy. Like so. Him being another rookie with me, he took the brunt of everything. He took the brunt of everything. You know how it is. If you get one guy that's just kind of different than everybody else, and kind of hone in on him and zero in on him, Beer was that guy that they all zeroed in on. So for me, I kind of got to sit back and laugh because it was funny. You had to do the regular stuff like I had to buy a meal for the whole organization. Mm-hmm. I had to carry pads and do all that stuff my rookie year. But as far as like hazing and joking and picking and just like constantly driving somebody, Kabir took all of that.
Was he a higher draft pick than you?
No, he wasn't. He was Kabir was a 4th or a 5th round pick.
Interesting. So usually
he was an undersized guy. He was an undersized guy, and it was kind of the same thing. They didn't know if they were going to use him at linebacker or defensive end when he first got there because he was kind of really skinny. So he had to gain a little bit of weight to kind of play defensive end.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I was outside linebacker, so I had Patrick Willis was in my draft class. So I was a fourth round, but he was like the 15th or 16th pick overall. Yeah. I had to do some small things, but Patrick probably took care of all of the big money deals because he had the money.
Yeah, he had it. He had it.
Bubba
Franks was he was our first round pick. So yeah, all the big money stuff. Like we had a bunch of draft picks that year too. I think we had like 19 or something like that. Folks. Yeah, there was a huge draft class. It was somewhere between like 14 to 19, somewhere around that number. So it was double-digit draft class. So I was lucky in that regard too, that I didn't have to do it. It wasn't just like 2 or 3 of us. There was like a bunch of us. So everybody had to pick up the load. But as far as the D-line room goes, Kabir took all the heat.
You know what? So when I was in St. Louis, James Laurinaitis was the first round draft pick. Usually you take that rookie out for dinner. You're going for the Ruth Chris. You're racking up, depending on how many guys in the room, $10,000 to $20,000 dinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's kind of the going deal. But you know what they did that year, which I thought was way better than going to a dinner. James went out and bought us all like brand new iPad. You got an iPad or a MacBook Pro?
Oh,
I'm like, you know what? That might be the best idea I've ever you get one dinner, one good night, but
yeah,
I'll take that. That's actually way better, way smarter.
Something you at least use least ball too if you needed to. So we didn't have to do like the dinner out. They made us, and if you were a first or second or third round pick, you had to pick up the tab for the organization's breakfast, like the Saturday morning breakfast or like the day after the game breakfast. They had a caterer that would come in, so you had to pick up the tab for the entire organization, not just the D-line room or whatever.
Right.
So we had to do that. I had to do it twice. Everybody first, through third round had to do it twice, and then everybody else, they made them they didn't make the 7th round guys do it. You know what I mean? Because of course they weren't in as much as other guys, but they had to do some stuff in their rooms. But as far as my room goes, Santana Dotson was kind of like our big cat in the room. So he was just one of the funniest dudes, man. Just always. And you got to the league, the coaches and the players were like one almost, right? Mm-hmm. They were like one. It was almost like a buddy thing. So it was just funny to see him. And our coach's name was Jethro. So Jethro sounds just like a Jethro. He's from California, but just the biggest character. And so, man, I will never forget those times, man. Those were just fun times with those guys. And but they were good. They were good. Did you hear stories about veterans that kind of sabotage the young guys?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of that. These guys took me under the wing from day one and taught me how to play, and taught me everything that I needed to know to be successful, on and off the field.
Right.
On and off the field. I had good veterans, man, and still talk to those guys to this day.
Nice. What's a tab like picking up a whole breakfast for an organization?
It wasn't that bad. It was just a couple thousand.
Okay.
A couple thousand, because it was just like a caterer that came and did omelet bars, and it was breakfast, so it wasn't like steak and champagne. When you go to those dinners, it's like no holds barred, liquor, food tab, everything on the tab is yours. So for the breakfast side of it, we just really had to pay for breakfast for a couple hundred people, so it wasn't too bad. You know what I mean? It was like a couple $1,000.
Mm-hmm. What year then? How many years did you play before you had your bad knee injury?
I actually tore my knee up my rookie year.
Did you?
So my rookie year, which was crazy because I was playing starter minutes, started on dime and nickel, first guy in the rotation at 3 technique in the 0 technique, and I played some defensive end too. So I played across the board, was playing a ton of minutes, playing a ton of snaps, and the knee injury happens, and then the trajectory of my career just goes left. So the NFL is all about staying healthy. Mm-hmm. It's not really about, a lot of times you see guys like, how's this guy still in the league? Just they stayed healthy.
Okay, you're preaching to the choir, brother.
they just stayed healthy. So for me, I couldn't after my knee injury, it was a wrap. I was literally playing on one leg for 2 years after that. And I just knew I couldn't. I couldn't defend myself after a while.
Yeah. No, my first 2 years were on the IR.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
I had 2 season-ending injuries in the last preseason game, back-to-back years.
Yeah, that's
so
brutal.
No, I mean, it's just you get up the worst start ever. And I mean, I'm lucky to get my vested years. I'm vested, but man, it's not the way I tell people. I go, your rookie year is your most important year because if you get hurt, you are put behind. You got some leeway if you're a first or second round pick.
Yeah,
but after that, man, you become damaged goods real quick, and they try to get you out of there. They're always looking for that next guy to replace you. When you get hurt, man, it puts you up on the 8 ball real quick.
Yeah, I found out it was a business real fast. My head coach didn't talk to me for almost a year after I got hurt. Yeah, I was injured. I was
Right.
like, tore my quad completely off my kneecap, broke part of my kneecap off, like brutal. They hadn't seen the injury in the NFL in like 25 years. Like they didn't know how to rehab it. Like they were trying to figure out. The trainers told me like we've never really dealt with this. Like so we're trying to figure out how to rehab this and get you back to speed. But my head coach was just a business guy. You know what I mean? So he didn't talk to me literally. The first thing he said to me when I got back on the field was, "I thought you'd never come back to play."
Sherman said that?
Yeah. Like, I thought you'd never get back to play. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, this guy's a real prick. Like, dude, like, I went through a lot to get back to play. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things nobody knew. So they felt like Santana actually partially tore his quad.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a partial tear, like on the inside of his leg. So it was almost like a hamstring tear for him, right? Like he had to have surgery and reattach it. But I tore my entire quad off my kneecap. So it wasn't the same amount of trauma that he had to go through. But Santana coming back that next year earlier than me kind of hurt me in a way because they were like, well, if Santana had a torn quad, he's got a torn quad. How come he's not back yet? But it was two totally different injuries. They just took it as torn quad because that's what it was listed as the same thing. It was not the same injury.
I think because you came back. Did you come back to Nebraska to rehab?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing
that's actually where I met you at. Yeah. I met you.
Right. Yeah.
I came back to play to rehab at Nebraska with Doak because I just wasn't happy what was going on out there.
Yeah. I'll get you out of here on this one. So, who you got obviously a ton of kids coming through the Warren Academy, and obviously you can go down the list of guys who have already are signed D1, who are going to be playing D1. But who's some up and comers that people don't know about yet? Who are you excited about?
There's a receiver out of Papillion, Tyson Money. Really not a huge guy, but really fast. A playmaker. I think he's got a Division I future. Maybe not a Power 5 guy. But there's a tight end, a young kid named Ben Bramer that's going to be a sophomore. That I think he's got a shot. He reminds me a lot of Fidone. He's tall, 6'5", very fluid. He's got to build. He's got to come into his body. He's young still. But him and then another guy is Zane Flores, the quarterback out of Gretna.
Yeah.
He's got a Power 5 future. He's really good.
Yeah, because he started quarterback as like a true freshman at Gretna, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, from day one. Great talent. Great talent. As far as that goes, those two probably to me. Right now, Zane's probably got the highest level of potential. Him and Ben, like those two are pretty special kids, and they're both just sophomores. So that's why I'm saying that. They're good players right now, but I think that they can keep growing into being guys that are like top of their class type guys.
Yeah, you still get down. I lied. Last question. You still get down in your stance and show the young bucks how it's done.
Not as much as I used to. Not as much as I used to. Sometimes you have to. Right. Sometimes you have to get down there and show them a step or two and do some things. So not as much as I used to. Now I've got guys. I'm lucky. Like Harrison Phillips comes back.
Yeah.
I've got another guy that's waiting for his call. Ryan Arith. That's they're both NFL guys. So now I got guys that have now come out of our room, that have come out of the academy, that come back and help. So it makes my job a lot easier because now they get to do all the demonstrations. So it's fun.
Nice. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know you got all those academies rocking and rolling, and it's good to catch up, man. And let me know you got some young buck DNs. Let me know if they need some help. I'll come show.
Absolutely, bro.
I'll come show a thing or two.
We're actually going to be starting just a special division of O-line, D-line with the academy, just their own group. So I'm going to call you up, get you up to work with those boys.
All right, brother. I'll be there, man. I'll show them how to. I'll show her a thing or two. I'm washed up as well, but I think I got a couple things in the tank.
No, we still got the knowledge of the game. That's what we can pass on.
All right. Appreciate it, Steve. Bro.